Welcome, everybody. Another live episode of Event Marketing Redefined. Really glad to have everybody here today. I'm excited today to talk to Kat because I think it's very cool. You start talking about these host events as they become more popular. They're becoming bigger, more centralized parts of companies' event marketing program. And I think what's really cool is that we're getting Kat fresh off of doing this. I think it was 20 days ago. So everything's kind of fresh in her brain. And I think it will be great to try to extract that, pick her brain, talk to her. Kat is with Gainsight. Their host event is Pulse. Kat, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You're right. We're just about 20 days and it's good because I've just started coming back to having brain function after the event. So this is good timing.
Yeah. We were going to ask you to do it like 3 days after, but I figured we would not function. No, just kidding.
I think that was one of the dates on there. And I was like, I might need a little more space.
There we go. No, we're good here on this 20-day. I think you'll be able to reflect. So give me a little bit just on you. Give me your background, just kind of how you've gotten to this point here with Gainsight.
Yeah, of course. So I actually started my career in hospitality, restaurants. So I went to college for hotel restaurant management and thought I would one day open up a restaurant. And then I spent a few years working in restaurants and I thought, no, thank you. So, the hours are intense. The energy is intense. I loved it. I did it for 10 years in New York City, but that was good enough for me. So, I worked with a lot of really cool celebrity chefs, but I think I just packed as much restaurant experience as I needed into those that first decade. So I moved out to the Bay Area and started contracting for an event agency, Freeman XP, for most people who are familiar. When XP was a thing, that was kind of the more agency side of Freeman, but that no longer exists. But I did a couple of years contracting with them, which was really cool to be on the agency side. I got to work on a few different really big conferences and events and kind of started on the F&B side of things since that's where a lot of my expertise was. And then just slowly started working my way into logistics. And in 2019, I contracted with Gainsight and fell in love with the company, the culture with, at the time, what was Pulse then, and was lucky enough to get brought in-house and have been creating incredible Pulse experiences and other Gainsight events for the last 5 years. So yeah, so that's
great. I find a lot of people transition from hospitality, right? It has a real easy flow into events, so that's pretty common to hear, which I like seeing that because a lot of the skill set transfers. Tell us about your role now, like exactly what you're doing. What does it entail? What's your day-to-day like, your goals, objectives, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I am the director of the corporate events team here at Gainsight. So my team, I have two incredible event managers that work with me. We are in charge of all of the Gainsight hosted events and all of our trade show partnerships. So for Gainsight hosted events, we're talking about Pulse, which just happened in the US. We also do a Pulse Europe, which takes place in the fall. And we also do just a 2-day exec summit, just a very high touch style event at luxury resorts around the US, and that's in the fall as well. And then we participate in probably 15 or so trade shows throughout the year. So the team definitely keeps busy on that. And, those can range from 100 to 1,000, couple thousand people. So we really just all kinds of events. And then we've got another team here at Gainsight that handles all the field marketing. So I have a counterpart, the director of field marketing and partnerships, and that team just does our incredible road shows, kind of more of those smaller dinner, really high touch prospect driven events. And so those are the mighty event marketing team here at Gainsight.
So tell me, what I would love to start, I want to give people some foundation, some framework around Pulse, right? So tell us why Gainsight hosts Pulse, who comes, what's the community attendance, what does all of that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So background on the background, Gainsight is a customer success platform. And when they started just probably about 13 years ago, customer success was not a thing yet. So customer success, a lot of people think of it as customer support and those people that you call and sometimes yell at the other end of the phone, but that's not what it is. Customer success is intended as a B2B service, and it's really intended for a platform for our customers to then kind of manage their customer life cycle. So Gainsight started and customer success managers were far and few between. So a couple years in 2013, they decided to start a customer success community event called Pulse. Originally, the name Gainsight wasn't even associated with Pulse. This was just a way to bring a few professionals spread out across the US together so they could kind of talk and commiserate and network and share ideas in an industry that was still pretty up and coming. So that was the first Pulse in 2013 in a ballroom in Oakland, California, with about 200 people. And since then, it's just really grown. It kind of grew in size, obviously, year over year. I came in 2019, was the first year it had moved into Moscone West in San Francisco, which for those of you that are not familiar is actually, a convention center. So that was like the holy grail for them, having been in ballrooms leading up to that point. 2019, they actually had 5,000 people join, which for about 6 years of growth is incredible to go from 200 to 5,000. So they did that. I contracted the year of 2019 for the first year of Pulse, and it has a different energy. So it's open to Gainsight's customers and prospects. So it's not a user event by any means. We are very stern in the fact that it's a community event. It's for people to be really sharing their thought leadership, their ideas, networking, and obviously there is Gainsight product mentioned in the sessions, but we really try to keep it product agnostic as much as possible. And it's really just a way for the customer success professionals to come together. And some people have actually called it like a camp, summer camp, a summer camp for CS, where it's like the one time of year they look forward to. They get to kind of do like a reunion with their professional, people that work with other companies that they don't see a lot. So the community of Pulse is what really drives the event forward year over year. And Gainsight obviously is the host of it, but it's really the community that we're doing it for. It's not meant to be a customer conference or a user conference in the way that some traditional tech conferences are set up. And that's what makes it pretty unique.
Yeah, them saying that summer camp for customer success, right? Like those are the type of things you want people to say about your events. I think they want to have those feel, they want to have that positive kind of that energy. So I think saying that the event is like product agnostic, right? Where you're staying away from being like a big pitch for Gainsight constantly in their face. I think that's awesome, right? And I think any sort of advice to people on how to do that the right way, right? A lot of people get worried with events. They think it's one big pitch. They think it's sponsor after sponsor in your face trying to sell you something. So how have you gotten to the point with the event where your attendees are considering it like a summer camp and they're looking forward to it, right? And you're product agnostic?
Yeah. So we, again, because the event is very community driven, and I think with my hospitality background, the reason I got into hospitality, besides the fact that I love to eat, is to me, the meals that bring people together and kind of just that is what connects people. And so for me, it's always been about creating connections and the space for people to connect. So, and I think that's what's special about Pulse and why I've stayed here so long is that it allows me to create 2 days of connections for people and opportunities for them to connect. So yes, we run a ton of content. Don't get me wrong. This year we had 10 concurrent breakout tracks, 9 sessions each over the course of 2 days. So, we're talking about 170 speakers that our team was managing. And the content itself is phenomenal. But we also create moments of joy and opportunities for people to connect, not around just business discussions. So this year in particular, we kind of decided to do sort of like a high school 80s, 90s, like nostalgia theme. So you walked into the venue, and this venue in particular, we were in St. Louis this year, had a very long hallway that kind of set itself up for us to create this almost high school hallway. So we built out these really colorful sets of lockers that we decorated with like posters that said, welcome Pulse class of 2024. And we had just little photos and stuff to give you that high school feeling. So the minute you walk in the door, you're just getting these like emotions. And that's too, like we try to play on people's emotions, right? So you want to bring them like joy and excitement from the second they walk in the door. And this year we did like a friendship bracelet making station, right? So people could just sit down and create friendship bracelets, and then conversations just obviously start flowing naturally. And then next thing you know, these people find something in common. They're connecting on LinkedIn and they're talking. We do a lot of like roundtable events for different industries or personas. Just again, it's really just creating opportunities for people to talk and connect, because we find that's what people want the most outside of the content. And these days, we record all of our content. We provide it at no cost on what we call our Pulse library, so that people can really spend the 2 days focusing on making connections and not really necessarily needing to run from session to session, knowing that they can watch the content after the fact.
I love those pieces there. And, the authenticity behind it, even just the way you kind of talk about it and just essentially what you're trying to create. I think that's what people are looking for when they go to an event, right? Because to your point, They can view the content anytime. And frankly, a lot of the content at times that people get, they can go find on their own. They can watch at home. And that's becoming a theme. The more
Yeah.
people that I talk to, which is attendees, doesn't matter the industry, doesn't matter male, doesn't matter female, doesn't matter old, doesn't matter young, is if you're going to get me out of my house and you're going to get me into a city for 2 or 3 days, I don't want to do stuff that I can do at home. I want to do something different. I want to be engaged. There's two pieces that you said that I want to go back to and I want to touch on.
Yeah.
One is a little more fun. One is a little more like logistical thing. Let's just start there and we'll get it done with. 170 speakers. Like, how do you give a little insight into managing that, right? I would love to gain a little bit of insight into how you manage that, selecting them, orchestrating.
Yeah, it's a process for sure. Months long. Like usually we start about 5-6 months in advance. I've got an incredible event manager on my team who took over speaker management about a year and a half ago and has totally streamlined it and made it super efficient. We open a call for speakers about 5 months out, usually right around the time we open our registration for the event. So we're actually getting ready to open our call for speakers and registration for the Europe event, which takes place in November. We, for Pulse this year, Pulse US, I think we got close to just over 200 submissions for people to speak. We traditionally on the form ahead of time, we know the topics that we want to sort of format our tracks around. So we'll put it on the form. What topics would your session fit into or like relate to the most? Is it customer retention, customer experience, product, things like that? So that way our product marketing team, once all is said and done, we usually leave that open for about 5 weeks. So we allow 5 weeks for people to submit. And then we just go through and sort. And some will jump out at us right away. Some will be not topics that we want to cover this year. Then we really just whittle it down. We create tracks and figure what are the best topics that we think the professionals want to hear about this year. And then we typically take that, propose it to our executive team just so they can have the final say and making sure that they feel that's the right content. And then my event manager works with all of the speakers from the moment they're invited to speak and accept all the way through. We've got an incredible CS team here at Gainsight. They kind of work with us to be what we call track leaders. So they really work with the speakers on their tracks. So 9 sessions, they each take 9 sessions and work with them to just develop the right content, make sure that, because they're essentially the audience, they're customer success managers. And so they're working with speakers to make sure the content is what we think the audience will want to hear. We always make sure there's tactical takeaways for people. Like, we don't want people to sit through a session and then get up thinking that was a waste of my time, right? Yeah. So we want them to be able to walk away with excitement and say, oh, the things that I heard in this session are things that I'm going to immediately take back to my team and start implementing in our business. So we just really work with our speakers to make sure that the content we're putting forward at Pulse is really just valuable, because there's some events out there where they just give you a time slot and they say, do what you want, right? And we don't want to, we're not that conference. We make sure that our attendees are hearing things that are going to be valuable to them as they leave Pulse.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's smart in the sense that that's going to help reduce your churn, right? You're going to be delivering a better event is a product at the end of the day, a better product to the people that are there. I asked slightly selfishly I was asked to kind of look at some speakers and help for an event. So now I'm looking at them and I've never really looked at them this way. Like, I'm looking at like the cost, I'm looking at their bio. Now I'm on their LinkedIn, trying to figure out like who's kind of a fraud and is just touring and talking versus like who's been there, done that, has like stories and is going to come in and deliver like applicable things that people are going to be able to really resonate with and take with them and be like, wow, like that was a great talk. Like, I think about all the keynotes I've sat in or discussions. Bill Rancic was a guy from The Apprentice. He won the first ever Apprentice, and he came on, and as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, like listening to him for an hour, I left like I was ready to run through a brick wall. I had 5 pages of notes. I couldn't keep up. So I just, in my brain, I'm thinking like, that's how you want people to feel when they're in the audience, essentially. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. You talked a little bit about moments of joy, which I really love that you said that, like saying that you're trying to create moments of joy for people. I think that creates an attachment. It's emotional. It's what you want when people are in person, right? We're all emotional beings. So talk to me about the creativity side, creating moments of joy. not playing on emotions, a bad way of putting it, but like
Yeah.
understanding that people have emotions. And then also any tidbit from like, does your leadership encourage this, push this? Where are they aligned on that?
Yeah, so I'm incredibly lucky. One of our values here at Gainsight is childlike joy. So we wholeheartedly encourage inside of work, outside of work to really bring the child in you out. And so when we're designing Pulse, that is a driving force, is making sure, because again, I've been to conferences where you come in, it's keynotes, it's content, there's meals and snack, and that's it.
Yep.
And then you're out and there's some sponsors to talk to. So we want to create moments of joy, opportunities for people to connect. And you can't do that if there's nothing outside of the content. So we're very intentional about what we do. And we're making sure. So this year, obviously, something that started in 2019 and we've brought back every year is called the Puppies of Pulse. So we traditionally partner with a local rescue shelter agency in the city that we're in, and we bring adoptable dogs to
amazing.
Pulse. And
just
every
makes
year
me smile just when you say puppies.
exactly.
I just start smiling.
Every year.
Yeah.
So 2 days in between sessions, or if you duck out of a session, you get to sit literally in a pen that we build out. And I've got pictures over the years of attendees with puppies just like asleep in their laps in the middle of the day, because I mean, that brings most people that I know, that brings them a lot of joy. And then we always adopt. We've had a number of Pulse puppies adopted over the years, which is
that's awesome.
Cherry on top. So that brings a lot of joy. But in the expo hall, we try to have a lot of fun with it. So we do games that you can play together, obviously always bring people together. So ping pong, air hockey, foosball, things like that. We did the friendship bracelet making station this year. We did something this year called Pass a Note, and we kind of had a wall of affirmations, and we encouraged attendees to kind of take it and just hand it to random strangers in the hall, similar, because we kind of had that high school feel, like how you would pass notes in school. Yeah. And they were just like nice things, because sometimes it just helps to hear something nice throughout the middle of the day. And so we really just want to again, like, give people opportunities to connect. We also do something called Surprise and Delights, which for us are typically food and beverage related, but we'll send out an app notification and we'll have like acai bowls randomly being offered from a space, and it kind of just draws some traffic there. People start chatting while they're waiting in line, and it makes people smile. Like, that's what we really want for Pulse. So if you come to a Pulse event, the energy is just palpable. People, for the most part, I like to say most people are very happy for the 2 days that they're at Pulse with their experience. And similar to, like, again, my hospitality background and what I was saying about Disney and Gaylord, where like they really think of everything. It's Gainsight, we pride ourselves in really thinking about those moments outside of the content where people are connecting and walking through the halls and like seeing, little things. Sometimes we'll like hide little Easter eggs, like Gainsight related Easter eggs in places, but it just brings people joy for those 2 days. And that's really what we like to do.
You know what I like about what you just said is essentially that's a part of Gainsight's DNA. Like, that's who they are. So you're instilling it into an event, right? Which I think is very cool. So it kind of comes naturally. Everybody's aligned and behind it. So like, to me, that just makes me think, like, for event marketers that are listening to this, whether podcast or live right now, is like, what's in your company's DNA? What makes you who you are? And then trying to integrate things into your events, because they're probably easier to get sign off on. It's probably more authentic. You probably enjoy doing it, who the company is and what people are all about there. I also think just talking about the little things, like I think about experience at an event, at a trade show, at an activation, whatever it is. Sometimes little things really add up to being big, and they make an experience versus like the big bang. If you don't have the money, Dan Genghis, a buddy of mine who's the experience maker, talks about, like, if you can't pay for Beyonce in the fireworks show, like, you can do all these little creative touch point things that are meaningful to people that can really make their whole experience, even though they're little touch points.
For sure. And there's lots of conferences in every industry. And so you want to stand out. And so it is those little things. And sure, concerts are cool and like big name speakers are great. But for us, we've found that investing in those isn't always really worth the ROI that comes from it. It doesn't typically lead to more ticket sales. It's great for the people that will come, but like, that's not what's going to drive your ticket sales. And so for us, it's like creating the experience and making Pulse something that people are talking about still 20 days later on LinkedIn, and kind of creating FOMO in people that maybe didn't attend this year. And again, like, there's great content at every conference out there. So it's like, what can you offer outside of the content that will keep people coming back? And also, like, being adults is sometimes a little mundane, especially now in a world where so many companies, Gainsight included, have gone remote. where, you're sitting in an empty living room all day by yourself, talking to people through a computer screen. So for those 2 days where you get to bring people together, like, make it count. And that's where we stand in those when we plan those 2 days of Pulse.
All right, let's take a question because I love questions and we got to reward the questions so they keep coming. So question, Christy Burns. Christy, thank you so much for asking a question. How was St. Louis? I've collected RFP responses for my user group from St. Louis the past couple of years, and no one from my leadership team will even consider it, thinking that no one wants to go to St. Louis.
Yeah, I hear you, I will say, and I fought a similar fight. So Pulse was in the Bay Area for 10 years, and I live in the Bay, so nothing against it, but we definitely, for the last 2 years that we were here, did get some attendee feedback that the downtown area was starting to feel less safe, and that it was expensive for what you were getting, right? So you were paying a lot of money and then potentially not feeling the safest walking back to your hotel. And so we decided it was time to just take a break from the Bay Area. So we did our venue search. This was probably back in early 2022 for our years in 2024. St. Louis came up as an option, which obviously made some people raise eyebrows. I had a little bit of a leg up in the fact that Gainsight was actually founded in St. Louis. So for me, I drove it as like a returning home sort of situation after 10 years in the Bay.
You gotta sell it.
So that was kind of me. But even with us having been founded there, my CEO was not into the idea, and some of them executives still were, after I had signed the contract, were like, are you sure you can make this work? And I get it. I mean, every big metro has positives, has negatives, you can find crime anywhere, you can find, unfortunately, unhomed folks anywhere, but St. Louis, the city itself, is phenomenal to work with. They were incredible in making sure that our attendees felt safe. We worked with the local police force to get like additional patrols the days that we were there, just to make sure that feeling of safety was there for our attendees and present. So and it was central, right? We got a lot of feedback. Thank you for moving it off the West Coast, right? Because it's shorter flight times and it's much more affordable for people. And in this day and age, especially in tech, T&E budgets are becoming much tighter. So by offering it in San Francisco, we saw teams that could again start sending multiple people as opposed to just one, because the T&E cost was significantly lower. But I actually had a great time in St. Louis and would totally encourage people to look at it with fresh eyes. Like, people had a great time. They have some great restaurants. I was talking to Matt before the show started, the baseball stadium there, and that whole area is phenomenal. If you do events like outside of the traditional conference, they have a new MLS team, but there is a surprising amount of stuff to do in St. Louis. So I would encourage your exec team to just take another look, for sure.
It's a great question, Chrissy. We were talking about this just before, and we were kind of mentioning the idea of like, we're not denying the power of Vegas, Orlando, the major metro city. Like, they're great and they're there for a reason, but there is a bit of an uptick when it comes to smaller third-party conferences, user and host conferences, where they are going to cities like Louisville, like St. Louis, like Charlotte, like Nashville. We talk about the Gaylord there as but there is a look into these mid-market, smaller, up-and-coming cities, because they do have more to offer than you think. The in and out is easy, it's inexpensive, and it has a little bit of a charm.
Will work with you. They want you more than Vegas does. I can tell you that.
Yeah, Vegas doesn't need you per se.
Exactly.
But of course, it's Vegas. They're putting so much infrastructure and build out. They're going to need you. But yeah, no, that was a good question. Kat, I want to get back to what you were saying about moments of joy, creative, the little things. What's like your, where do you get your ideas from? Where are you saying, hey, I'd like to do A, B, and C? Like, do you have a bit of a process? Do you have a line of thinking? How do you set those things for your event?
Oh, geez. I know nothing on paper really at all. We kind of obviously start with a high level theme. Year over year, much to the dismay of our design team, we changed kind of the look and feel of what Pulse is going to be and sort of our branding for the event. And as much as our design team would love to sort of pick a Pulse brand and stick to it, we've done such a good job creating different sort of environments year over year that our exec team loves it. So last year we did a really cool like sort of space theme with really fun illustrations of spaceman and astronauts. And, it was like very future forward business goals was our messaging. This year we sort of did the like high school nostalgia look and feel. So First, we start with a theme. We usually present a couple options to our CEO, and he picks the one that resonates with him and we think we can have the most fun with. And then we really just brainstorm what possible activations you can do that are tied to it. So I will say I walk around on a daily basis and just think like, how can you turn that into? So like, again, the friendship bracelet making, we had a Lego wall this year where people were like standing there and building things next to each other. But it's just oftentimes, obviously, like some activations can cost lots of money, which we have a decent event budget, but by no means am I like, spending Dreamforce style money over here. So it's activations that you think will bring people together, right? That's always the goal for us, is an activation has to be sort of a co-working like participant activity. And then is it something we can execute within reason financially? The puppies are always a non-negotiable now that we've started that. Like when I go to venues, I make sure we can bring in puppies. And so that's usually our one non-negotiable. We also have been offering headshots year over year, which people really like. So we do a headshot station. But then outside of that, we take ideas from our agency partners and just things like I'll be on Instagram one day and see something really cool. And like, how can I bring that to Pulse and just start working through it? So we really take inspiration from anywhere.
I like that the puppies are in the contract non-negotiable when you're talking. That's just like line number 8B. Hey, just want you to make sure you take a look at this, right? One thing you said there that I want to touch on is saying that you start with a theme and then you get sign off from your CEO and then everything stems from there. Because for me, a lot of times when we're working with clients, it's trying to pull them backwards to be able to go forwards, if that makes sense. And we're always looking to root in a theme and a concept, because then you are able to you can have all these crazy ideas and throw them on the wall and say, we want to do this. I saw that, but you have to be able to tie it back. How do you get stakeholder buy-in on theme? Is it just presenting a bunch of things? Do you know your CEO? So you're essentially throwing some stuff at he or she that essentially you're like, oh, they'll get this, or does that work for you?
Yeah. By now, for 5 years under my belt, I know our CEO pretty well. And I also started right around the time that our creative director started. So her and I have a pretty good partnership when it comes to like our pitch to the CEO. And we know like the option that we want is the one that we put forward, tons of ideas tied to it. Oh, but then there's this other one if you would like to explore it. But, by then he's usually pretty sold. So we are pretty good about brainstorming, again, where can we have a very strong storyline throughout those 2 days, so the look and feel can be really cohesive. We can do a lot of fun messaging throughout the venue, and again, tie in activations, because you don't want to have people walking around like, hey, that's cool, but like it doesn't make any sense, right? So we want to make sure, again, it's like a journey for people through Pulse. And so it's like this year we brought in the lockers, which were really fun, and just we did a really cool balloon arch over the entrance to the expo hall, similar to like what you would be seeing at like a high school prom or things of that nature. Yeah. And so we did an AI photo booth this year because AI must have, right? But we did it so it tied back to turning you into kind of like an 80s style yearbook photo.
That's very cool.
Which was really cool. So we use the same theme from the US to Europe. So we'll carry this through November. And then after we wrap Pulse Europe, my creative designer and I will start brainstorming again for Vegas. We're already starting to think about it a little bit. Obviously, we're moving Pulse to Vegas next year. Vegas is unavoidable at some point. So we're moving it to Vegas, which I'm excited about.
It's like the mothership.
It is,
it's the dark side. They get you.
So we're looking into some things that are currently happening in Vegas and like how we could potentially tie them to Pulse. But yeah, I mean, again, we take inspiration from everywhere. So we have light bulb moments at very random times and places, and we'll just be slacking each other. Like, does this work? Would this work? And I feel like, I live in cycles of Pulse. So right now I'm heading into my Pulse Europe era, if you will, but I'll be returning to Pulse US to start brainstorming themes soon.
We're going to quote that for you in some form of content that says, I live in cycles of Pulse.
It's true. I do.
Yeah. All right. We got some questions that are stacking up, so I want to make sure I get them. So William asked, he said, I can't tell from the Pulse recap, but was there a virtual component? If so, any creative tips to increase engagement for virtual attendees to feel connected?
So unfortunately for William, there's not. So what I will say is coming, obviously, the COVID years, we took everything virtual. 2022, we returned to in-person. We ran Pulse as a hybrid style. For those of you on the call that have done a hybrid or a virtual event, planning a virtual event is the same amount of work, effort, financial commitment as an in-person event. So here we were planning two completely simultaneous events to run for a virtual audience and an in-person audience. And to William's point, the engagement virtually is never going to live up to in-person engagement. And we really struggled with that first year. And again, because we provide all of our content after the fact, for us, it didn't make sense to continue trying to run a hybrid event. So now we really focus all of our time and effort on the in-person events and then push out the content after the fact, because virtually, other than content, you're not really doing much else. We had a few, networking opportunities or like rooms where people could go in and connect, but they weren't there for that because there's just no draw, unfortunately, virtually, that we've found, at least, to really, for a 2-day conference, to keep that partnership. So we live stream our keynotes from Pulse, but besides that, we don't really run virtual elements. We just offer the content after the fact. Virtual engagements, it's tough. I will be honest about that. So
I think one of the main things that people took away from COVID was it kind of shoved everybody off the cliff to say, you're going to have to try this, because there weren't a ton of outlets.
Yeah.
People did it. And then it's a typical grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I think a lot of people there realized, okay, there's applications for virtual that work.
For sure.
And there are applications that do not, right? It's never one is better than the other or winner take all scenario, right? It is what works for you, what works for your audience, what works for your content. And you kind of have to decide and deploy it through your event program.
Yeah. During COVID, our field events team came out with some phenomenal virtual experiences that they still run today. But
nice.
Those for hour, 90 minutes tops, because that's really all somebody has the bandwidth for on a virtual capacity. But if you're trying to do 2 days of content virtually, it's hard. And most people are going to log in for 1 to 2 hours, but we'll still end up watching it on demand anyways. So,
all right, let's go to the next question. Shazia is asking, and it's great because she's always here and she's a good question asker. Says, hi, Kat, can you touch on how US and Europe events differ from planner to execution? Also, are attendees and expectations different? And what patterns of engagements has changed for your sales and BD teams on site?
Yeah, for sure. I will say the Europe audience, we've had not as much success pleasing the Europe audience when it comes to our themes, because oftentimes we come off very Americanized. Obviously, being an American-based company, there are some jokes that we've made on stage that we've definitely found to have fallen flat with the European audience in the past. But at some point, we just embraced it. They know we're American. And so, yes, so we actually we polled the audience members, some European friends, saying, like, is high school a fit? Like, they don't even have a high school, right, per se, in Europe. It's called different things. The grade levels are different for people. But the overall consensus was Europeans know about high school from American shows or movies. And we were like, okay, that's good enough for us, right? Yeah, that's good enough. We'll take it. So we've sort of embraced that. The Europe audience, they're a little bit more serious and refined, obviously, than sometimes Americans can be. But we like to still have fun with it. Like, we'll still do a lot of games. We're still going to take the friendship making bracelets there. And we just know that occasionally, some of the survey feedback will be, that was so American or something of that nature, but that's who we are as a company. And so while we thought about changing that for our Europe audience, again, we don't want to change the heart of Pulse and who Gainsight is. So we don't tweak it that much. We do have a separate Europe team, like a sales and a BD team, that are based in Europe. So they're much better with connecting with their customers at the actual business level, because at the heart of, obviously, all Pulse is our business goals. So, don't get me wrong, while we have a ton of fun with Pulse, obviously for 2 days at Pulse this past year, we made sure our sales and CS team, they hosted over 300 meetings during the 2 days with customers and prospects that were there. So yes, while we have a lot of fun planning Pulse behind the scenes, like, it obviously still drives our business goals forward. The Europe conference, while the look and feel are the same, the goals don't change. And again, it's just a lot of our sales and CS teams on the Europe team making sure we're getting the right people in the door of Pulse. So they just make fun of us sometimes a little bit more.
I think it's a great question by Sazia. And then with your answer, I think is interesting in the sense that, like, yes, like, Europeans are different than Americans. So do you curate your whole program just to switch and go over there? Do you stick to who you are and what you stand for and what you're about and, let people decide? I think there's probably somewhere leaning on staying who you are, but making maybe some minor tweaks or something, right? That people probably do for Shazia. Like, if you're going from one continent to the other, essentially. But overall, I like what Kat said. I wouldn't be switching up entirely and making a whole new program. I don't even know how you do that for something that big over and over. So next question, we have Allison. Allison, thanks for the question. A little off topic, but does Pulse utilize an app where people can register for breakouts, get maps, agendas, etc.? I'm trying to find recommendations on that specific tech.
Yeah, we do tech. There's lots of tech out there. For the past few years, have used Attendee Hub, which sits in the Cvent suite of products. We've used that as our mobile app. And so we do pre-event registration for sessions, which we found to be pretty successful, especially for Pulse US. The venues can be pretty spread out. And the last thing we want, again, thinking about that attendee experience, is we don't want an attendee showing up to a session, being turned away, and then having to walk like 5 minutes to another room that they may or may not get into. So we do encourage session registration ahead of time through the mobile app. We obviously put floor plans in there, Q&A, surveys, things like that. We had at one point made them, like coming out of COVID, had made the mobile app super robust, but then it's kind of stripped back to like more just informational again, like it started out, where people are just glancing at it quickly to see where they need to be and when, but really keeping their eyes and focus on the in-person activations.
All right. So I want to ask a little bit about, like, you and I had originally, when we were discussing Pulse and talking, I asked, like, what are your positive signals, right? Because I'm a big believer that whether you're doing a trade show, activation, host conference, whatever it may be, like, I'm just a big believer in, yes, there's goals, there's objectives, there's ROI, there's that kind of measurement, but also like there's positive signals in the event and coming out of the event. So
Mm-hmm.
what for you all at Gainsight and through Pulse, what are some positive signals? And then what are like some objectives and measurables that you're looking to sort of achieve?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely spent the last 40 minutes or so talking about Pulse like a big party, which it is. And we definitely try to make it that way. But
Yeah.
at the heart of that lies Gainsight's business goals. And so obviously we go in with hefty goals, and sure, attendee numbers, yes, but it's also just for us, like the quality of people there. So, while I say that it's not a Gainsight user event, at the end of the day, do we want everybody at Pulse to be a Gainsight user? Yes, that's
Yeah, of
great.
course.
But so we obviously have goals in the numbers of like of how many of our customer accounts are we bringing to Pulse? How many prospects are we bringing? We make sure that if possible, every single customer and or prospect is meeting with a Gainsight representative, either their CSM, their AE. If it warrants, we put them in the room with our CCO, our CEO, our CMO, some type of executive, because the FaceTime is what you need to really help drive deals forward or to help save somebody on the verge of churning. Is they really just want those few minutes to kind of have open Q&A or ask me anything time with one of your execs. And so we utilize the 2 days of Pulse, and hopefully they're feeling excited from being at Pulse, those moments that we're creating. And then we put them in a room and say nice things about Gainsight and hopefully walk away with a renewal or a new deal or a commitment to another product in our suite. So Pulse itself, while we're creating those experiences, the business goals are really what drive that forward and is why Pulse exists. So we do a lot of in-person meetings, but again, it's like, if somebody is coming and not having a great time at Pulse itself, they're less inclined to have a good conversation with your team, period. We have a Gainsight booth also where we have lots of conversations, the traditional like trade show style setup where our sales team, our SDR team, SC team is there doing demos and such. But because you've got the energy of Pulse that surrounds those conversations, we've got stats where we find that deals actually close faster or have sort of a shorter time in our pipeline from attendees that have gone to Pulse after the fact. And so we've got some numbers, just, overall sentiment of prospects or customers that come to Pulse traditionally has deal influence in shorter deal cycles for sure. So that's always positive for us and why our sales team continues to humor us getting people to Pulse.
I think that's a good and very specific example for people that you have deal acceleration, right? Because I think like that's what I lean back to when I talk about pipeline impact, right? A lot of people get very stuck at their events of leads, net new sales, new pipeline, things like that. And it's like, well, that's just one side of what goes on in an event.
Yeah.
They're from prospects to customers to deals that are in the pipeline. I mean, talk about your average deal size, right? Average deal size or deal acceleration. There's just a lot of things that go on inside of an event. And if you can capture those, now you're starting to really be able to measure ROI and understand the positives and what I like to call the positive signals that are moving this event forward.
Yeah. And we really enable our sales and CS teams before and after the event when it comes to the content. So we say, you're dealing with X customer, and for them, they're this challenge that they've been facing. Well, guess what? We've got a session for them at Pulse encourage them to go to that session, right?
Yeah.
Where they can sit and hear real time about how another similarly sized company who faced the same challenge was able to solve for it. So we make sure, we release the agenda, we come up with attendee guides, and we really encourage our teams ahead of time to be talking to their customers and prospects about what are they the most interested in hearing and driving them to the right sessions. And then after the fact, because obviously we get session data from who attends which sessions, we can see so-and-so didn't attend this session, but this content would have been super helpful for their account. Well, guess what? We send them the recording and we say, hey, we really think that this recording is going to help you. So we definitely make sure to enable our teams before and after to really use the content to drive deal conversations forward, which has proven to be very valuable.
That's awesome. Let's get to another question. You're very popular. You get lots of questions. So Shazia asked, and Shazia, thanks for the question again. Can you describe, this is a good one. Can you describe your social media campaigns for events? What works, what doesn't? What have you experimented with to increase engagement?
Yeah. So if you were in some circle of customer success, hopefully your LinkedIn was blowing up for the last 20 days with just tons of Pulse posts. So, obviously as Gainsight, we do a lot of posting. We use our executive team to post and get that excitement going. We sometimes use what we call customer success influencers. So like people that we know have very big networks, we get them excited. Sometimes we'll offer them complimentary tickets just to get them to Pulse and again, create that sort of LinkedIn excitement and social media. On site at Pulse, we actually run what we call like social media contests. So we encourage people to be posting on LinkedIn, and then we give away gift cards or a free ticket to Pulse 2025 for the post that gets the most engagement, because then we know that's like organic posting on our behalf, because you can only post so much from your own account over the course of a 2-day conference and continue getting the right engagement. So we really use our Pulse community to be posting about it and using them as sort of a way to amplify Pulse out to the bigger CS community. So yeah, I mean, Gainsight does a lot of Pulse coverage, don't get me wrong, but again, somebody's going to only want to see so many posts from Gainsight popping up on their LinkedIn, but they would love to see 10 other people within their network talking about how valuable the experience was.
Yeah, Shazi, I really like the answer that Kat gave in terms of like influencer and sort of kind of spreading the word in that sense. I think two things that I would definitely consider is, I think there's two factors. A, the audience, where are they, right? Like what's their platform? What's their choice of use? It's typically not everything. Like you can't blanket everything. And then I would say the other side of it is sometimes companies have a very good presence on that platform already, because from a marketing perspective, they're on top of it, right? So what's your strongest platform? Where is your audience? And I would say for campaigns, you should be meddling in that space and be heavily focused on that space versus being everywhere. I would be somewhere specific and putting a lot of effort into there. Question from Christy. She says, how far in advance do you launch your app?
So our app itself for the event, we're usually 3 weeks out. That seems to be the sweet spot where before that, people aren't really yet forward planning to be at your event. So the app doesn't feel very important to them at that time. So 3 weeks is usually when we release the app and we say, hey, start building your schedule, start registering for your sessions. And then we'll usually do another reminder about a week and a half out and the day before. But anything more than we've launched like 5 weeks in the past, you just don't get anything those first 2 weeks because it's not top of mind for people yet. They're not ready for your event per se in the calendar sense. So 3 weeks we've found to be pretty successful for mobile apps.
Good question from Stephanie here. Stephanie, thanks for the question. How do you drive attendance for prospects? What is their motivator for attending? Do you offer a lower rate?
Yeah. And again, even though we push Pulse as a non-Gainsight event, prospects are obviously a little wary of that. So we do enable our sales team with discounts. We give each sales team an allocation of tickets up front when we open registration, and we say, use these how you need to with prospects. So a lot of times they'll do like a buy one, get one, or like a buy two, get a third free to get the prospects. Because for us, again, like having prospects there is more important to us than the revenue that we're getting from them on the ticket sale. Because once we can get them to Pulse and they can experience that energy and like hearing all of the customer advocacy that's happening around them, that to us is more valuable than the ticket revenue of $1,500. So we definitely enable our sales team to do discounting, especially when it comes to prospects.
And I think if you're talking, I saw something in the chat, people were talking about like KPIs, right? Objectives and things that you're trying to accomplish. So there's like, I think with KPIs and objectives, you have leading and you have lagging, right? You have to understand the difference between those so you can set them up accordingly. But essentially, Kat, what you're saying, the way I take it is that like a prospect being there is more important than the ticket sale itself, which makes complete
Absolutely.
sense.
Yep.
So depending on how important the weight of that is at a set event, yours, I think it is important. That becomes a KPI, right? That
Yeah.
becomes how many prospects did we get to this event?
And when I build my event budget out, 6, 8 months in advance, I build discounting into the expected
Yeah.
ticket revenue so that I'm not surprised at the end of the day that my sales team gave out, 100
Yeah.
passes. So I build in a percentage that I know is going to go out the door at a discount or complimentary. But again, being able to take at home millions of pipelines 60 days after the event is so much more valuable than the $10,000 potentially in ticket sales that were discounted. So
yeah, makes sense. Kat, tell me a little bit about obviously event of this size and even most events, even small events. I mean, it takes partners, it takes, suppliers, agencies, builders, partners, it takes all kinds of people within your circle. Any advice for others on working with partners, finding partners, what's important to you in partners? Because I think they're a big piece of this.
yeah. And because, I've been lucky in my career to have worked on the agency side, really even the venue side. When I worked in New York, I ran a catering venue for a while. So I've seen all facets of sort of event planning. And so for me, what's important in a partnership is I like transparency, right? I don't want to be working with somebody when there's shit hitting the fan behind the scenes and they're too scared to tell me, because I can't solve for that and I can't
Yeah.
answer to my executive team if I don't know that it's happening. So for me, I just like a partner who is willing to just be an extension of my team, and they're not trying to like sweep stuff under the rug or hide things from me, because I, at the end of the day, also have to answer to our executive team, to our budget, and make sure that like we're working together. So I really like I've got a wonderful agency partner and AV and a general show contractor that we've worked with for years on Pulse. And they are also just like always bringing their creative vision to Pulse and like ways that we can improve it. So that's what we like, is people that almost consider Pulse their own program. And so we've been really lucky to find those partners.
I think on the agency side, it just makes me think like, I mean, we've worked with a lot of agencies. So, typically events like this, user host, things like that, agencies will come to us to execute work. And I can tell you that selecting a good agency, understanding who is heading up the event for you from that agency, are they 1099? Are they full time? What's their experience level? Like there's depths of details where like all agencies are not equal. I can absolutely
And if
promise you that.
you're RFPing agencies, I would ask to talk to whoever they intend
Yeah.
on putting as the lead on your event,
Yep.
because you work with that person for a lot of hours leading up to your event and you want to make sure it's somebody that you work well with.
Yeah.
So you can get a good feeling from an agency, but also make sure you're talking to whatever lead they would intend to put on your program.
And I think, like you said earlier, Kat, it just makes me think like they truly are in a scenario like this for a single event, whether you RFP it every single year, that person is an extension of you, like completely, because the way they're negotiating, the conversations that they're having, the decisions and the things they're bringing back to you. I mean, there's big budget items, there's big decisions to be made. It's a very important piece there. We're getting on time here, but I do want to make sure we get all the questions. We have 2 more left. We have a whole laundry list here. Another question from Shazia. She said, how do you collaborate with your sales team to book meetings? What tools and support do you give them?
Yeah. So this year, for the first time, actually on our registration form, we had a question that says, do you want to meet with Gainsight? And it was yes right now, yes at Pulse, or not at this time. So that enabled us to take the people we knew were really interested in having those meetings and get those set up. And then outside of that, again, and we are looking to our AEs to make sure that they are taking any accounts that they own and setting up the meetings. The same for the CS and the CAM teams. So we are often sharing reports out of, we almost have a full, what we call our master list of accounts, right? And it's like, does this account have a meeting set up? No. Well, why not? Right. So we, as I'm sure some people on this call know, sometimes have to chase the sales team a little bit to make sure that that gets done. But again, like there's no point in us hosting 2 days of a wonderful conference and then not being able to get any pipeline from it. So we just really make sure that they are spending the 2 days of having that FaceTime, because we know that the FaceTime will pay off in the end.
I do like that you're just asking there, like, hey, do you want to meet with us or not? Like, because then you're just getting people that are raising their hand and essentially they're like, yes, me. And then it's very easy to curate sort of the way you communicate with them and what you set up for them. I do like that a lot. Stephanie says, do you have any tips on motivating your internal CS teams to invite customers to the event so it's not relying on only marketing outreach? And I just want to say before Kat answers this, I think this is such an important question for people to understand how to work with that team and making sure that sales, that they're on board, they feel motivated and aligned. So this is a great question.
Yeah, I think I need a whole other hour for this topic, but I will condense my response as much as possible. Yeah, it's challenging, right? Sales and CS have other priorities all the time. Yep. But again, we've got a proven track record that Pulse helps with deal acceleration, deal size. We have a ton of customer advocates that connect within Pulse. They connect to our prospects. We have a customer advocate sort of like network that will sit down at Pulse with customers, right? Because sometimes prospects don't want to talk to people that work at Gainsight, because obviously you're going to sell them Gainsight, but they're totally willing to sit down with a customer of Gainsight who had the same problem with them and can talk to them about how they solved that. So similar to the content you're putting on stage, but instead you're putting that in a small meeting room. So you just have to remind your sales and CS team very, very, very frequently that these are the things that can happen within Pulse and to help them move their deals forward. Because a kind reminder that I'm basically trying to put money back in your pocket when you close this deal, get them to Pulse definitely is a reminder that they need. But there's so much more to it that who knows, maybe Matt and I will need to set up another time for that. Also happy to connect on LinkedIn and continue conversations too. But yeah, sales and CS, I've not yet mastered full enablement without some hand-holding or babysitting. So if you have, please let me know, but we make it work. So a lot of it sits on marketing's shoulders, as I'm sure everybody can relate to.
It could be an entirely other show for sure, an hour on just that. Sure. I think one thing that I would like completely take away from that and push on that is like, you need objective data, right? Objective data tells a story. You can't just ask sales to do something. B, you have to know, like you said, what's in it for them. How does this positively, if they do this, how does it positively impact them, right? And then that also, all of having that information goes into measurement, goals, objectives, alignment with executives. So like as the event person, the more you arm yourself with this information, the more you can utilize it to get sales CS to do what you want them to do, to get alignment from your executive. It's just a part of the foundation of running really successful events, for sure. Kat, we're right on the hour. I have more things to get to, but I like to keep it to an hour. We got a lot of Q&A, which always means it's a great show. You were awesome. I appreciate you so much coming on. It's great to hear about Pulse. I love the playfulness of Pulse, but also the seriousness of Pulse and the business side of things. It was really enjoyable having you on.
Yeah, it was awesome being here. Thank you.
Everybody, repeat people, new people, thanks for coming on. It's another episode of Event Marketing Redefined. We greatly appreciate the hour of your time. We will be putting out a summer schedule, a summer tour with dates, with shows. We have some really cool stuff coming up. We have a mentor and a mentee, a head of global events, and a new marketing event person that we connected. They're going to give us their story about how the mentorship's going, and a bunch of other really cool shows. So set your schedule. Hope to see you here. Hope to have you live with us. And thank you again for showing up. Kat, you were great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.